Hey Fabric users! In this video, we'll walk through the Configure Environment notebook, which sets up important environment variables and an SSH configuration file in your operating system that Fabric can use to run smoothly. In the Fabric API examples, this notebook is under the Fabric Environment Setup section. Running this notebook generates two files. First, the Fabric RC file, which contains variables used by Fablib, and the SSH config file, which you can use to SSH into your remote host through your command line interface. This notebook only needs to be ran once every time you either run Fabric from a new location or change the Fabric project that you're working under. In order to continue with this notebook, we must first generate a bashing key through the Fabric portal. From the portal homepage, select the Experiments tab. From here, select Manage SSH Keys, and then Bastion. Now, under Generate SSH Key Pair, enter a name, a short description, and then under the Key Type drop-down menu, select Bastion. Here's an idea of what a fully configured key should look like. Once completed, click the Generate Key Pair button to create your Bastion key. Download your public and private key, and if using the Fabric Jupyter Lab, upload your private key to the Fabric config directory. Let's now look at this first cell. Set Bastion username and project ID. These first two variables can be found in the Fabric portal once again. Your Fabric Bastion username is also found in the Experiments tab under SSH keys. At the top of this page, click the Copy button in the Bastion login cell. This will copy your username to your clipboard. Back in the notebook, we can now paste in our Bastion username. The Bastion username and project ID both need to be enclosed in apostrophes, as the cell is ran in bash. So, delete the sample text, type 2 apostrophes, then go between them and paste in your username. In the portal, go to the Projects tab and select the project that you're currently working under. In the table at the bottom of this page, there will be a project ID row. Again, click the Copy button next to your project ID. Your project ID also needs to be enclosed in apostrophes. Lastly, this third line should point to the file location of your Bastion private key that you downloaded earlier. Once everything is set, you may run this cell. This next collection of cells establishes the location of your tokens file and your slice private key. The token file will contain personalized tokens, allowing you to use the Fabric API. The slice or sliver key files enable you to SSH into your Fabric slices through your command line interface and using Fabric. If you're using the Fabric Jupyter Lab, your slice key files already exist in the Fabric config directory. If not, you should remove the hash symbol in the second cell, and the slice key files will be created by the SSH keygen command. This tutorial is being recorded on the Jupyter Lab, so we won't need this. The third cell will set the needed permissions on your Bastion and slice key files to access your nodes through a Bastion host. As soon as you're ready, run whichever of these cells you need. Now, we will create the Fabric RC and SSH config files. Many of the values set in these files will be the same ones we established in the cells above. One notable exception is the Fabric log file. This is a location where Fabric will send output if something goes wrong during a run. Make sure to check here if you're confused by an error. If everything is fine, run this cell. Once finished, the Fabric RC file will be created in the location set at the top of this cell. This defaults to the Fabric RC directory. Lastly, we'll create the SSH config file. This file isn't used internally by Fabric, but it's useful to users who want to SSH into their nodes directly. After making any desired modifications, go ahead and run this cell in order to create the config file. In order to demonstrate how to use the SSH config file, I've created a slice using the Hello Fabric notebook, which you can find a tutorial for. And I'll be using the SSH config to access it from the Jupyter Lab interface's command line. So here I'm going to copy the management IP from my printed node, and then I'm going to go over to my SSH terminal and type SSH -I and then the path to my slice key. slice private key, which should be by default fabric config/slice key if you're using the interface and haven't changed anything in your configure environment notebook. Then I'm going to do -f in the path to my SSH config file, which will be fabric config/SSH config. And then lastly, I'm going to use that management IP, and I'm going to do that by typing rocky at and then the management IP. So if I enter that, I have went ahead and SSH'd into my remote host. We hope you found this tutorial helpful.